But there are questions. For instance, according to CNN, Nolan didn't return to the dock with his friends that day, and his family didn't understand why he would separate from them, that he was supposed to take a different boat back but didn't. Nolan apparently didn't have a cell phone with him. There were reports of an alleged altercation that day. According to the sheriff, one of Nolan's friends contacted the Coast Guard on the night of July 4th at around 11 p.m.
But there are questions. For instance, according to CNN, Nolan didn't return to the dock with his friends that day, and his family didn't understand why he would separate from them, that he was supposed to take a different boat back, but didn't. Nolan apparently didn't have a cell phone with him. There were reports of an alleged altercation that day. On July 4th, 2026, 18-year-old Nolan Wells, a football player for Southwest Mississippi Community College, took a boat to Horn Island with friends. He never came back. The official narrative, as presented by authorities, is straightforward. Wells chose to stay behind. He drowned. There is no foul play. But the facts on the ground don't match the official story. They paint a picture of a young man who was separated from his phone, at the center of conflicting witness statements, and at the heart of a growing firestorm of distrust. This isn't just a tragedy. It's a mystery with more questions than answers, and a family demanding the truth. Before we go deeper into what the documents actually show, make sure you're subscribed to Project Cold Case. Because we don't just cover the story, we follow the evidence.
That's always how he's been every single time. There's also this. Nolan's mother told GMA that they tracked Nolan's phone using the Life 360 app, and they found out that his phone was with his friends, and she claims that it's possible some of the texts and messages were deleted. So a lot is going on, and as this is going on, we have new developments. There is some back and forth we need to talk about. Apparently, there is a video that is circulated
Nolan's
online.
mother told GMA that they tracked Nolan's phone using the Life 360 app, and they found out that his phone was with his friends, and she claims that it's possible some of the texts and messages were deleted. The first piece of the puzzle is the phone. In 2026, a teenager without a phone is like a sailor without a compass. It's almost unimaginable. But according to reports, Nolan Wells was separated from his device, and his mother claims that when the phone was recovered, messages may have been deleted. This simple fact, a missing phone, should have been a blaring alarm for investigators from the start.
That is going on, and you know, thank God all young people, they have cell phones, and anytime you hear people raising their voice, they start the video. And so you hear on the video, Nolan saying, "Give me my freaking phone. What are you freaking doing?" And that becomes even more relevant when you think about the story that they are presenting, that Nolan chose to stay behind. That's what they're saying. The glaring contradictions just jump out at you. The fact that he is there with his friends, and you look at all the videos, it seems to be he's the only black on the island, or maybe one other, but not many. And so
you hear on the video Nolan saying, "Give me my freaking phone." What are you freaking doing? This is the sound of a case breaking open. A viral video emerged from the island, capturing a heated argument. Initially, civil rights attorney Ben Crump, representing the Wells family, pointed to this video as critical evidence, saying it showed Wells demanding his phone back. The implication was clear: there was conflict, and it was connected to the device that held his digital life. The question of how and why it suddenly became central.
Jared, you have where a young woman he was talking to says that, well, Nolan said he was going back to get on the boat with the boys. The boys say that Nolan told them he was going to stay and talk to the young woman. It's a contradiction. They're not saying the same thing. One of them is telling the truth, one of them is not.
Okay, real quick, I got to say this. Look, running a business is tough enough. Why would you make it harder doing things manually or relying on dozens of apps that don't talk to each other, right?
The glaring contradictions are just jump out at you. The truth is, the official narrative is held together by a thread of contradictions. Attorney Crump laid out a fundamental conflict in the accounts of what happened that day. A young woman Wells was speaking to said he told her he was going back to the boat with the boys. The boys, however, claimed Wells told them he was staying with the young woman. This isn't a matter of interpretation. It's a direct conflict in the witness
that don't
testimony.
talk to each other, right? That is where our sponsor Odoo comes in. Odoo is an all-in-one business management platform with a full suite of integrated apps that seamlessly connect all your operations, from sales and accounting to manufacturing, even shipping. Odoo can automatically generate professional, sleek-looking sales orders, invoices, and vendor bills, and it can automatically assign sales teams and send email updates throughout each sales stage. They can even use AI to pull reports that help with your decision-making. For manufacturing, their apps can sync inventory with real-time production and purchase updates so you never run out of stock. And when it comes time for accounting, that's also fully automated. Odoo can create invoices, track expenses, and even summarize data with AI to save you hundreds of hours. You know what the best part is? You can choose your apps and even build custom workflows so it's all fully tailored to your business's needs. Look, take your business to the next level by consulting with an Odoo expert today for free at odoo.com/sidebar. Well, here's the thing. According to ABC News, despite Ben Crump claiming last week that Wells was asking for his phone back and that he was part of this argument, Nolan's reported good friend, Trayston Shepard, claims that's not the case, that there was no altercation that involved Nolan. He even claimed that Nolan isn't even in the video. Quote, "That's me yelling. There was no talk about a phone in that video. Nolan wasn't on the island." And Shepard said it was a fight with a stranger. Shepard said that Nolan stayed behind after the boat had to return to shore because of an electrical issue, that Nolan had met a girl. This is something we've heard before, that he met a girl and he stayed behind. And Shepard
The
claimed
boys say that Nolan told them he was going to stay and talk to the young woman. This is the central conflict. The narrative presented by the friends, that Wells voluntarily stayed behind, is directly challenged by the testimony of another witness. Someone is not telling the truth. This is not a misunderstanding. It's a fracture in the foundation of the investigation. The family latched onto this, seeing it as a clear indication that the full story wasn't being told.
And Shepard claimed that he would come back on a different friend's boat. He also countered this narrative that Nolan was at a pool party early in the morning of July 5th. There was this photo that had been circulating as well. So in other words, the idea would have been, right, that Nolan left the boat, made it to the mainland, went to this party, and ended up dead. Now, Ben Crump even apparently shared a photo, again, of what people believe to be Nolan at this pool party. Now, according to TMZ, Crump reportedly posted this photo to social media with the caption, "Now listen, I don't know if these are facts or rumors because no official statements have been confirmed. We sometimes have to follow all clues until the truth is found." But Shepard once again pushed back, said that that photo was actually from a party.
One of them is telling the truth. One of them is not. This is the heart of the case, and it's a phrase that will echo throughout this investigation. One of them is telling the truth. One of them is not. The question is simple, but the answer is a ticking time bomb. To find the truth, investigators must systematically tear down every alibi, every convenient story, and follow the evidence to wherever it leads. The Wells family is not satisfied with the official account and has taken extraordinary measures to find the truth.
Nolan's mom called the sheriff's office midday leading into July 5th. The family has concerns about why Nolan just stayed without friends. His mother saying to GMA, "That we cannot answer. I can't fathom why he would." His father saying, "We always told him if you go with a group, you stay with a group." In fact, Sheriff John Ledbetter previously indicated that Nolan may have stayed on the island rather than heading back to the mainland. But even Nolan's friend, Javon Williams, told CNN, quote, "I've never known Nolan to stay back while his friends leave. He's always been a guy where if he rode with you, he's going to come back with you. That's always how he's been."
And by the way, this follows Jackson County Coroner Bruce Lynn Ginder's announcement that an autopsy is being conducted by the State ME office. But the results are pending because of toxicology test findings that could take several weeks. The family retained Ben Crump, a prominent civil rights attorney, who immediately announced plans for an independent autopsy. They are not waiting for the state's timeline. They are building their own case. The involvement of an attorney of Crump's stature signals a deep-seated lack of faith in the official process. A fear that the investigation will be, as he put it,
People
swept
of
under the
color,
rug.
particularly people in the South, uh, that's not an unreasonable concern. Historically, my former profession, has not always behaved in a way that's worthy of the trust of everybody in the communities that we're supposed to serve and protect. So the idea that the parents would be suspicious, would be concerned that the local authorities might not do a great job, I think that's fair. And again, I'm not casting any aspersions on the Jackson County.
And I think for a lot of people of color, and particularly people in the South, that's not an unreasonable concern. Historically, my former profession, has not always behaved in a way that's worthy of the trust of everybody in the communities that we're supposed to serve and protect. This isn't about baseless conspiracy theories. It's about a lived reality. The family's decision to hire outside experts is rooted in a historical distrust of law enforcement, particularly in the South. They are not just grieving a son. They are fighting a system they fear will fail him a second time.
Every little bit helps, and that may be a bigger contribution than you think to this case. This is what he told ABC News. I got to talk about this now. Okay, let me bring in Matt Irvine, retired detective, law enforcement instructor. I'm always happy to have Matt. I was really excited to have you on to talk about this. We haven't talked about it yet. In fact, right before we came on, right before we hit record, you and I were talking about what Sheriff Ledbetter had said about not rushing this investigation.
And that may be a bigger contribution than you think to this case. Sheriff John Ledbetter has appealed to the public, asking for any photos or videos from that day, a rare and telling move. This public call for help suggests the sheriff's office may not have a complete picture of what happened. In a digital age where everyone has a camera, the public's help can be the key that unlocks a case. This is a critical moment that underscores just how many questions remain.
I think the sheriff's statement is entirely appropriate. It's measured. It's true to the way investigations roll out, which is that they take time. I think part of the problem with this case, and we talked about this some months back with the David Burke case, is people are conditioned from what they see on TV, what they see in the movies, to think that investigations happen very quickly. CSI results come back immediately, and that's just not the case. Toxicology, CSI, forensics, autopsies, investigations can take weeks, months, sometimes even...
I think part of the problem with this case, and we talked about this some months back with the David Burke case, is people are conditioned what they see on TV, what they see in the movies, to think that investigations happen very quickly. Retired Detective Matt Irvine appeared on the program Sidebar to explain the realities of a complex investigation. He pointed out that the public is conditioned by TV shows to expect instant answers, but toxicology and forensic tests can take weeks, months, or even years. This is a critical point that is often lost in the 24-hour news cycle. The truth takes time, but the demand for it is immediate.
Office, something along the lines of, we don't see any foul play here, we don't suspect foul play. That's a premature statement, and I think that unfortunately suggested to some people that they were rushing to judgment. So I think
Why do you think they said that? Why do you think, was there nothing outwardly to suggest there was foul play? And I wonder if they said that to try to calm some of the, the emotions that people had, but was there something on the outside that they could immediately determine there was no foul play? I mean, why make that statement unless they
We don't see any foul play here. We don't suspect foul play. That's a premature statement. Irvine directly addressed a major source of the controversy. He argued that the initial statement from the sheriff's office that there was no foul play was premature. This early declaration poisoned the well. To a grieving family, it sounded like a rush to judgment, a decision made before all the evidence was in.
Sounds like the young woman said he left her to go back to get on the boat with his friends. That's not necessarily a conflicting statement, right? Both things could be true. If she didn't actually see him get on the boat, that doesn't necessarily mean that he made it back there, and something might have happened along the way. So you'd really have to look at the exact words that folks used in describing what they thought happened.
Sounds like the young woman said he left her to go back to get on the boat with his friends. That's not necessarily a conflicting statement, right? Both things could be true. If she didn't actually see him get on the boat, that doesn't necessarily mean that he made it back there and something might have happened along the way. The core contradiction is not a dead end. As Irvine points out, both accounts can be true if the timeline allows for it. Maybe he told both parties different things. But that in itself is a major red flag, raising questions about his state of mind or the dynamics within the group that day. What could have happened in the short time between him leaving the girl and failing to reach the
He was not
boat?
initially named in any of the public statements, so he's choosing to be named and choosing potentially to open himself up to the kind of threats that some of these other young people have received. Very important that everybody involved in this visit to the island be interviewed, that they be interviewed.
I think it says a lot about his credibility and his intentions that he would put himself out there. He was not initially named in any of the public statements. So, he's choosing to be named and choosing potentially to open himself up to the kind of threats that some of these other young people have received. One of the friends on the trip, Traciston Shepard, broke his silence. He did interviews, pushed back on the narrative, and claimed the viral video was of him, not Nolan. In doing so, he risked his own safety, revealing that he and others were receiving death threats. His willingness to speak, to put himself in the line of fire, complicates the narrative. Is he an innocent man trying to clear his name, or a guilty man trying to control the story?
All the time, but I think getting in water would be an exception. You're not going to get in the water with your phone in your pocket. So the idea that he would leave it behind with somebody or on a boat if he's going to be getting wet makes a lot of sense.
Now, I have to tell you, people are looking at this and saying,
Normally, young people have their phones with them and on all the time, but I think getting in water would be an exception. You're not going to get in the water with your phone in your pocket. Irvine offered a plausible explanation for the missing phone. It's common to leave your phone on the boat when you go swimming. He called it legitimate question, but not definitive proof of anything nefarious. This is the complexity of the case. Every suspicious detail has a mundane explanation. But for a grieving family, the accumulation of these small inconsistencies is damning.
If anything.
Well, the fact that he was separated from his phone for a period of time is concerning. Again, it's not necessarily evidence that anything nefarious happened, but it's a legitimate question. Why was he not with his phone? Why was he not posting things on social media? Why are these conflicting statements about how he intended to get off the island and with whom? Those are all legitimate questions. I think it's also fair to say that a lot of people don't trust the police. And I think for a lot of people of color, and particularly people in the South,
the fact that he was separated from his phone for a period of time is concerning. Again, it's not necessarily evidence that anything nefarious happened, but it's a legitimate question. The pattern is clear. One of them is telling the truth. One of them is not. The phone, the video, the conflicting accounts, these are not just minor details. They are the fractures in a story that doesn't hold water.
What kind of experts are those? What is that information? I mean, I imagine law enforcement's looking at that as well. Although, as we reported, at least at the time of this broadcast, it doesn't appear that Crump has turned over the phone.
Although, as we reported, at least at the time of this broadcast, it doesn't appear that Trump has turned over the phone to law enforcement. If that's true, I find that interesting. The plot thickened when it was revealed that Crump had not yet turned over the phone to the sheriff. This is a critical point. If you have nothing to hide, why wouldn't you hand over the key piece of evidence? The phone is the Rosetta Stone of this case, holding potentially everything: text messages, location data, and deleted files. The delay in turning it over is a major red flag that raises more questions than it answers. One of them is telling the truth. One of them is not.
With an application like Snapchat, whether things are retained or deleted. But there are people who do nothing but cell phone forensics and forensic examination of electronic devices, and they're very good at it, and they're very good at recovering things that people think that they got rid of. In addition to whatever's on the device itself, there may be additional information on the servers of social media companies and providers of telecommunication services. So there's a lot of information to be gleaned there, both from Mr. Wells's phone and from the devices of other people that were there on the island at the time.
Now, I mentioned
there are people who do nothing but cell phone forensics and forensic examination of electronic devices, and they're very good at it, and they're very good at recovering things that people think that they got rid of. The delay might be strategic. Crump has stated his experts will analyze the phone before handing it over, perhaps to recover data they fear authorities might overlook or dismiss. This is a direct challenge to the official investigation. It's a move that signals the family is preparing for a legal battle, not just a search for answers.
Look like this desperate thrashing around that we might be used to from the media. Drowning is often silent. It doesn't necessarily look like somebody's in distress. And even a very strong swimmer can be overcome by currents and by things in the water that might impair their ability to swim.
One of the things that Crump also mentioned was, or questioned, was when Nolan's body was found, right? According to the New York Post, Crump said his body should have been there on July 5th. Why would it not appear until July 6th? If he stayed back on the island, there were boats there, there were people. It's just not adding up. What do you think?
Again, Mr. Crump is raising legitimate questions, but for every one of these
Drowning
questions,
is often silent. It doesn't necessarily look like somebody's in distress, and even a very strong swimmer can be overcome by currents and by things in the water that might impair their ability to swim. The cause of death is another massive question mark. An autopsy was performed, but the results are pending. Officials have suggested drowning, but an experienced swimmer drowning without anyone noticing is a tragedy that requires investigation. The silence surrounding the autopsy results only adds to the family's suspicion.
Depending on the amount of data involved, and it also has to do with the amount of personnel that are available to review all that data. That could be in itself very time consuming. The autopsy itself, at least the preliminary autopsy, both the official one and the private one commissioned by the family, should be complete or close to complete now or very soon. But there's additional steps like looking at toxicology, for example, that may take, again, additional weeks. So that's going to take a while. I think that probably additional potential witnesses may be identified besides the group of friends that went to the island with Mr. Wells. Those interviews may take additional days and weeks. They're probably going to be re-interviews as they gain information from one person that requires them to go back and clarify or confirm information with somebody they've already talked to. So I think we're probably talking about a matter of weeks, both for the Jackson County Sheriff's investigation and hopefully for the independent investigation sought by the family and by Mr. Crump. So I'm hoping it's not going to be too much longer than that. The tough thing about a case like this is sometimes even after all the information is in, you don't have a clear answer. I mean, for example, if the determination is that he drowned, well, that's a cause of death. It's not a manner of death, right? You could drown accidentally, you could drown by suicide, you could drown by homicide. So we might, at the end of the day, have all the facts in and still not have an answer that satisfies the grieving family or other people that are concerned about what happened.
Because the forensic evidence wouldn't be so clear to suggest how someone drowned, right? I mean, how could you show, unless there was some sort of blunt force trauma or some sort of evidence of, he was held down or pushed in the water or something like that? It'd be really hard to know.
Exactly. And even if there are some injuries to his body, depending on the injuries, they could be something caused by another person or caused by a body being in a rough current.
Matt Irvine, thanks for coming on. As always, thank you for giving us things to be thinking about as we cover this and continue to wait for answers. And we're just hoping the family gets those answers. So, Matt,
absolutely.
Thanks so much.
Thank you, Jesse.
And that's all we have for you right now here on Sidebar, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. And as always, please subscribe on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you should get your podcasts. You can also check us out on NBC's Peacock as well. If you want to follow me, X, Instagram, my News Nation show, Jesse Weber Live, Monday through Friday, 11 p.m. Eastern. See you next time, everybody.